So as Karen said, I'm a member of the NIRSA research team here, and mainly my work will be involved in sort of GIS, demographics, mapping, that sort of thing. So what I'm going to talk about here is just the start of a piece of work in December 2009 that we started looking at housing and unfinished estates and how it sort of progressed over the next year or two, which finished with the Department of the Environment full survey of unfinished estates. So our interest really in unfinished estates started three different endeavours really. One was personal curiosity. From about 06, 07 onwards, anywhere you drove around Ireland, you'd see it was noticeable that there was an excessive amount of housing, and not just in urban areas but in rural areas right across the country. You'd see these estates, not many people living on them, some of them not completed and so on. So it was just general personal curiosity to look into this. We also had a research agenda going in NURSA at the time looking at housing on an all-island basis. We've done some work with Harvard University, who developed the State of the Nation Housing Report in the US. So we started doing a bit of work on that, looking at housing in general in Northern Ireland and the Republic. And probably the main thing that got us started on this was after we had a one-day symposium set up within NIRSA where we had different geography academics from around the country met up just as a sort of a response to the housing crisis and the setting up of NAMA. And the idea is, how could geography and social sciences respond to the crisis in sort of productive ways. The main thing that came out of that was the establishment of a public geographies project, which was a blog that we run called Ireland After NAMA. And the idea here was that academics could get involved in this, provide some commentary, data analysis, an interpretation of how the crisis was sort of playing out, not just listening to figures from Central Bank or Department of Finance about the nation, but looking at what's happening across the country in different areas of the country. How is the recession playing out and so on. So basically we do some ongoing research. Any new research that people were involved in, they could put it up on the site, get it out there, people could comment on it and so on. So our interest in housing was gradually sort of increasing, but we really didn't know the extent of the issue, the extent of vacant housing across the country. House prices had dropped dramatically over a number of years, so we were interested in looking at the different policies and the process that kind of led to this. So the first piece of work we decided to do was we try and map housing vacancy in Ireland. Now we knew from the census an alarmingly high figure that nobody seemed to be interested in 2006, that already housing vacancy in Ireland was at 15%. As you can see in some areas across the country up along here, housing vacancy back in 2006 was up to 23% of the housing stock was already vacant. And that was 2006, so just imagine the amount of building that went on post-2006. So we decided we'd look at development post-2006 and look at the level of vacancy. We have a number of different research data sets within the institute here, and one is called Geodirectory, and it's created by Post, and it's basically a national address database, so it's a point for every single residential address in the country. And they have a number of variables in there, things like whether it's under construction, whether it's vacant, or whether it's occupied. So we produced this map here looking at the level of new houses post-2006 that were currently vacant. So actually the red you're seeing up here, all the new build post-2006, over 50% of those were vacant at the time. So we posted this on the blog, and it got a little bit of interest, but not too much. But for us, we saw the spatial distribution of vacancy, so we decided we need to look into this a little bit more. At the same time, this whole idea of ghost estates has been discussed in the media. There's a couple of documentaries on the Frontline or Prime Time. It was in the paper, so this all kind of lacked a real evidence base. We didn't know how many there were across the country. Were they just in rural places? Were they in urban places? Were they apartments, semi-detached houses, and so on? So we decided to do a piece of work on this and try and map the extent of the ghost estate. So we got a couple of researchers together and developed kind of a data mining script that used this geodirectory to group houses together in estates and look at the level of vacancy in there. So this was the first map that we produced, and what we were interested in at the start was to look at estates where we definitely knew there were people living on them, and there was a certain element of sort of under construction in the estate, so people were generally you know, in some ways kind of living on a building site. Like the picture down the bottom you can see there, you got the nice finished houses at the front, out the back it's a building site. So we're just looking at places that were under construction for, started in 2007, and 2 years later we're still under construction, so we thought, okay, there's problems with these estates here. So we came up with this list of 74 across the country, and we did some error checking around Dublin and Kildare. One of our researchers was run off an estate down the road in Kilcock by the developer. So we're quite sure that our results were pretty accurate. So we posted it on the blog, we sent the map to the Press Association, and we got quite a bit of interest on the blog. Or a little bit of interest, but not as much as we thought, considering this is the first time people were seeing the distribution across the country. It was picked up in a Sunday Times article, so the sort of graphics in the image you have these fabulous looking housemates living in the house, this shady character in the background. And the reality really was Dave himself, this sort of castaway character here in an abandoned estate. But it was the first time that our results and work got really picked up in the media. So we decided we had two decisions to make then. We needed to look at the full extent of ghost estates across the country. And also we wanted to do a piece of work, look at get a figure for complete vacancy in Ireland as well. The figure we came up with using census figure was quite a specific figure, 302,625, 302,000 plus vacant properties in the country. We posted this in the blog. We certainly weren't expecting it to be big news, but on the 9 o'clock news that night it was the third item on RTE News, and this figure 302,625 kind of flew into the screen. So things really changed in the department the next day. So we did a whole series of more analysis. We produced county rates. We did a housing model, and we got a lot of abuse from people involved in the construction industry, estate agents and so on, saying we were trying to destroy the housing market recovery. In the meantime, we were producing, all the time we were working on trying to get this complete figure of ghost estates across the country. So we came up with this final figure of 621. We've been talking to the media as well. On the front line, the director of the institute went on. We did a deal with them that it would be released on their show that night, and we put it on the blog that day as well. Produced figures of ghost estates per county. You can see Cork here it looks like it is the highest. A lot of the attention was there, but if you normalise that by say 1,000 population, it completely changes the distribution. So you can see counties like Leitrim, Longford, Roscommon, Sligo, areas up here at the highest level. So all of this hit the media. The next day was in the paper. We had in the Irish Independent a lot of the broadsheets. In some of the tabloids picked it up as well. The shocking scale of Ireland's property crash was laid bare last night as boffins revealed there were more than 600 ghost estates across. So we certainly weren't ready for this kind of media madness. Every radio station, local newspaper and so on across the country wanted to know, how do we find out this, so who are you going to call? It was basically the administration office within NIRSA here. So Keane was international coverage on CNN, the South China Sea, and journalists were up from France, so it was big. It was almost a global story. So we'd have a media strategy put in place in NUI, and it was only basically the director who would talk to anybody from then on. We also had issues with their data license provider. They weren't very happy. We hadn't told them we were using their data. They were getting calls. People asked them, where are the ghost estates, what's the vacancy in our county and so on. So we got into a little bit of hassle over that, so we basically stopped posting on housing. The department were then actually interested in our work because due to all the media pressure, they were about to start a survey themselves across the country to get an official figure. Remember, we were just working on the data that we had at hand, so we had to go out and error check a lot more of our stuff, so we did kind of a tour of the country, checked the map we'd have there would be the list of the states in an area. We'd go and check and just verify everything. All the time we were continuing a piece of work on a full housing report which looked at planning the issues that led to all of this. It's called A Haunted Landscape, Housing and Ghost Estates in Post-Celtic Tiger Ireland. Prime time, as I say, journalists were interested in this. And they did actually a short documentary with us on the report. We met with local councillors, sustainable building experts and so on. So it was quite interesting working through that. The Department of the Environment finally did their survey. They came up with 2,800 estates across the country. Now, these are where there's 2 units or more, so you know, if it's a small block, they're classing it as an estate, but it's not really. So there's 121,000 units, 65% completed unoccupied, 19% complete and vacant, and 16% at various stages of construction. And what was important for us is that the criteria we used, we looked at their data and they had 777 of those estates, so it verified a lot of our results. So we were quite happy about that. The results they produced were kind of buried on their website, so we decided to take them, make them more interactive, put them on Ireland After NAMA, did a whole series of analysis of the results, looking at different counties, the scale of the problem, how many detached, terraced apartments were there, the levels of vacancy under construction, and so on. So we just kind of added value to a lot of their work. We also put everything up on a website that we run called the All Ireland Research Observatory, www.aero.ie, and that's sitting there. So you have all the results of these unfinished estates are actually online there. I have about 30 seconds to show you this. Okay, so this is the Aero website. So there's kind of an interactive mapping tool that's sitting there with all of your sort of housing unfinished estates there. There's any data that was in the survey is all sitting behind this. The number of stages of completion, whether occupied, vacant, and so on. You can zoom in and out of different areas. Okay, just give one example here. Okay, this is out in Cabinteely of a couple of estates here in the survey. So you can look at all the data that's sitting behind it to analyse what's happening there. There's a whole series of, you could use different sort of Google Maps interface in the background to zoom in to look at the estate themselves. So as you can see, this one here completed, but it's in a complete, more or less a building site out the back. For the Department of the Environment, their main concern is health and safety. They've done a lot of work on this survey and subsequent pieces of work. As I say, their main interest is making these things safe. So there we are. Time up.